Here we go. Hey, my name's Julie Johnson. I am the founder of Integrate Trauma Informed Network. I am a public school teacher and a coordinator of a trauma informed and adaptive yoga program called Fit Abilities within the Ferguson Florissant School District. We are conducting an interview today to help kind of in our promotional content for our conference coming up on April 7th in St. Louis for the first ever Integrate Trauma Informed Network conference. We are interviewing Carrie Burnett today, who is a massage therapist and somatic experiencing, I'm not going to say this. I can't remember the actual term for this, but somatic experiencing student. Okay. I'm just going to stay with that. She can give you the actual technical term here in a second. Okay. SET, I hear what it is, but she'll get there. But it's in training. Anyway, she's going to be with us, and one of our speakers at the conference, and she's going to be with us today discussing a little bit more about her strategies around mindfulness and massage and somatics. So I'm going to turn it over to Kerry to introduce herself, and we'll start the questions after that. Kerry?
Hi, I'm Carrie Burnett. I own a business in St. Louis, Missouri. You can check out that at carrieburnett.com. I'm a massage therapist. I have a background in motor skill development and went on to pursue massage therapy. And while I was in that process, also just integrated my love for emotional health and awareness, and decided to pursue training with the Somatic Experiencing Trauma Institute. It's a 3-year program, so I'm a in training practitioner. Still have a little bit of time left to go with that, but the really exciting part about doing this work is that you get to do it while you're learning. So there's just so much amazing stuff to experience firsthand as you're learning and growing. And so in my practice, I mostly do somatic experiencing. I do a unique form of that because I am a massage therapist. A lot of somatic experiencing practitioners are psychotherapists. So they go about it with one approach, and then I take a different approach. In my practice in St. Louis, I work a lot with trauma therapists, trauma psychotherapists. We sort of share clients and collaborate together to find a really great approach that I've seen amazing results with. So yeah, I've got a lot of stuff that's coming up soon. If you follow me on Facebook, Carrie Burnett LMT, you probably know that I've been dropping hints about some new and exciting stuff that's coming up. Lots of new ideas and possibilities. I used to teach childbirth classes for a while when I was in my child bearing years. And so I now focus a lot on birth trauma and things like that. So I have sort of a wide umbrella of things that I do in the trauma circuit. And I utilize that massage therapy and somatic experiencing coupling to do that.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing. So we'll just get right into the questions that we've got for you that are going to kind of help us kind of create a better idea as to what you and Victoria Emanuela, who are going to be doing a body-based movement workshop at the conference, kind of more about some of the themes you guys are going to be talking to and speaking to. Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, where we go. Okay. Sorry. Here you go. First question. What do you think the biggest risk is for massage therapists regard to the misuse of power differentials?
Yeah, so something that this is a societal, cultural thing. Mm-hmm. We have this idea of a power differential, and anytime somebody has training in a particular skill, there's this level of power that's intrinsically given. There's a value that our society puts in that person, and rightfully so. I don't want to discredit that ever. With certain training, there is obviously just more awareness and knowledge and things like that. So as a massage therapist, I've really, spent the last year looking into what this power differential is. And there is a lot of danger in the field that we're in and in the cultural environment we have around this power differential concept, to misuse this in a lot of ways. And I see, I've seen this in my own practice. I've been very intentional, very mindful about how I approach clients. And I've come up with some pretty strong opinions about the concept of power differentials in general. I think a lot of times they're meant to, they sort of give power to the practitioner beyond the scope of practice. So there's this sense of, you're more educated than me, so you tell me what I need. And I see this as a big danger in the field that I work in as a massage therapist, because while we do have training in modalities and how we do massage and the body, generally anatomy, things like that. If somebody comes and points to me, I can tell them what the name of a muscle is that they may not be aware of. There is an education to that. There is a level of, I know something that I can offer my client. But the risk that we run is that when we fall into this power differential where we're in a place of power, generally speaking, we sometimes take away the internal power of our clients and we place that on ourselves. So we have people that will come and get on our tables and they show up to the massage, but they're not showing up because they're submitting their own experience, basically. So, I work a lot with experience. It's even in the name of what I do, somatic experiencing. A lot of that is focused around, we want people to really own that experience. We want them to be in that experience the whole time. And so the danger I'm seeing, even with clients, when I bring them into my treatment room, and, we have a very specific set of protocols that I follow in order to create the environment that I have set as an intention. I'm still working with a lot of this remnants of this power differential with whether it be with other massage therapists or just our cultural understanding of this idea. And so, I'll say to people a lot things like, I don't want you to get on the table if it doesn't feel right to you, or, let's talk about what would feel best for you. And it's almost like sometimes that concept can't even be, it's not even accessible because this power differential is so strong in our society. And so I spend a lot of time with some clients really untangling this mess that we have. And so one of the things that I think makes a massage therapist trauma informed, this is a very, it's sort of a catchy term right now, but it's a real thing. And so with my training in somatic experiencing, I have been given extensive training already, and I'll get even more around trauma, how it works, how it interacts with people's self and their power. And the problem is that when people experience trauma, and unfortunately a lot of people in our society do, there's a sense of disempowerment. And so when you bring that element in, and there's a lot of people that aren't even aware or aren't cognitively interacting with their own trauma yet. And so when you have this unawareness of that, of clients, and you have this power differential, people are coming to the table already disempowered, and then we're saying, yeah, stay disempowered, and I'm going to tell you what you need. I'm really grateful for the education I had at my school for massage therapy, because they did talk a lot about, they are very trauma informed, and they talked a lot about, we don't we don't tell clients to like breathe through painful massage. We listen to what they're saying. And this is really just like the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this stuff. Yeah, we need to listen to, and I really love that that's such an important thing that's taught. But even beyond that, you know, I feel like there's a lot to be said around not just listening, but actually actively engaging with this process of drawing that person into the massage, into their experience, and empowering through that. So even with that, you have to be a little careful, because you can still step into that power differential in that process and like draw towards that in our society. I see that as a definite risk. You know, so there are really awesome ways that you can go about, and Victoria and I are going to speak a lot to this at the conference. We're going to give a lot of practical tips on how to approach this, how to best utilize this concept of sort of, in my mind, I want to dismantle completely the power differential. Like, my thoughts are pretty radical in the sense that if somebody's asking me the name of a muscle, okay, that's where my power differential is. What's the name of this stroke you're doing? That's where because I have that education. But beyond that, we are talking about the human body. We're talking about the nervous system. And if there's anything I've learned is that every single body is completely different, and it's completely different from stage to stage to stage of their own emotional cognitive processing. So as a massage therapist, I have no authority to say, this is what you're experiencing, this is what this is.
Well, and I like what you said, because I think people, I'm just going to come at this because I hear this all the time. You said, I like how you're specifically telling what you do and do not have the authority to do, because whether it's yoga or massage or teaching, public school teaching, I know that, I'm just going to speak into what I know, leading in general, you know, people tend to put a lot of emphasis on the responsibility of the person you are in, whose care you're in charge of. You know what I mean? And so I like how you're differentiating what you do have the power to do and what you don't. Anyway, just saying.
Yeah. You know, and another piece I didn't mention there is massage therapists also have the power differential in the sense of ethics around massage therapy. That's another really important one that I think actually interacts with this whole trauma-informed practice also, is that the client coming in to my table, actually most of the people that I talk with about massage therapy in our culture don't understand the ethics around it. They don't understand how important it is to uphold those and why we have the ethics we do. But I do. I've had training in that. I've had a lot of education. I had an amazing teacher that talked like so amazingly about just good ethics and why they're important, and really helped us to understand that. And so, you know, that's I think an example of using your power differential in a way that you should. I know when people come and get on my table that that's a vulnerable space, even if they don't know that, because maybe it's not for them, but I know that just generally speaking, that's a vulnerable space. So
well, I think I'm gonna, before I go to the next question, I think that it's important to understand. I'm just going back to my own spaces when I've been in those positions, not knowing what I know now. You know, I think we go in expecting, and I know you're big on this in your practice, we go in expecting to be able to disengage, okay, at times. And that's a big part of your practice that you bring engage, is you're saying that actually we're not going to disengage completely. You know what I mean? Because that's while massage is good, and I'm sure you're going to speak to this, while massage in our society is good, you know, the style you bring into is actually, we're going to use massage to get into our body and not disassociate from our body, which is very typical of what we expect in typical wellness or healing worlds.
Right. Yeah. And we're definitely going to touch on this a little bit I think later, but I want to touch on it now too. One of the biggest risks with the mindfulness community, and I love mindfulness. So like, I don't ever want anyone to think that I am a naysayer, because I am a huge proponent of it. It's my work. It's like my life work. But one of the biggest risks I see is dissociation and denial a lot. So we'll talk about that a lot at the conference, about how that, like, very specific examples of how those risks play into that stuff. Also, you know, I work with this a lot when I get clients for SE, and now, you know, I'm making a big transition in my practice, where I am only offering massage that is in body. So I'm sort of stepping away from this bliss out mindset. Not that there's anything wrong with that, as long as people are aware of it. But when I have people come and get on my table, sometimes there's a working piece that a lot of people have that, we don't, it's sort of like the elephant in the room, where a lot of people will come and they just sort of say, their body might be saying, I don't want to be touched. I don't want to be naked. I don't want to be whatever it is for them that's feeling a little uncomfortable. But what we do in our society with this power differential is we say, well, this person knows better, that this massage is important. And so I'm going to silence what my internal dialogue is, what my nervous system is experiencing right now, because some of that, especially for people with trauma, can send them into the sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight. And it's almost like this dissociation, in the sense of like, I'm going to shut that off because I know that this is going to be beneficial for me. And so what I'm stepping away from in my practice is I don't want people to do that, because that's not conducive for a healthy. So one of the most amazing parts of massage therapy is the fact that it really brings people into that parasympathetic nervous system experience. And so one of the
you keep talking. Go.
Okay.
You're fine. Okay, keep going.
One of the biggest problems when we do this is that we actually sort of infract on the ability to do that, to go into that parasympathetic nervous system, because we're disengaging from the somatic, the body experience altogether, just for the benefit. So the benefit becomes more important than the process. And I think that's it really does a disservice to the power of massage therapy and what we can offer.
You can have cheese.
So yeah, I like to talk. This is like why I call in my practice the elephant in the room, and I like to. So you know, when clients come in, I'll just say, we can stay here. You know, we can do modalities that don't require you to get undressed. We can do modalities that don't even require me to touch you at first, because what we're doing is we're developing your own comfort so that your nervous system can be engaged in this, rather than just like diving into the pool, not even checking what the temperature is, and just like numbing out your whole body, and this bliss out thing where it's like, and I'm not saying bliss out can't be good. I really want to just differentiate this. Bliss out can be okay when people are cognitive of the fact that that's what they're doing. But there's a different side of that coin where it is a little bit of a dissociative thing. And we don't want that. We don't want somebody, especially if they struggle with dissociation or if they struggle with trauma, we don't want them coming into the table, shutting off and completely dissociating for the benefit of the massage. So we really abandon, I think, some of the amazing psychosomatic elements that are here.
Keep going. So tell me a little bit more. I'm going to get you talking about this. Tell me a little bit more. I know dynamic play is important to you. Can you tell me a little bit more about how this dynamic play that you like goes into your perspective on trauma-informed care?
The dynamic, like dynamic movement, you mean?
Yeah. How does this dynamic play? Like, how does like the dynamic you're talking about? Like, how does the dynamic play that you're talking, like the dynamic above, how does the dynamic play into trauma-informed care that we're talking about, in this paradigm shift of systems?
Yeah, totally. So, what we're learning a lot about trauma these days. It's definitely evolving. And so what the danger that we're finding is that with people who have experienced trauma, most of the time, especially if they haven't done a lot of work with that or haven't done a lot of healing, this disempowerment element is a pretty big thing. And in a lot of ways, that disempowerment can really lend itself to that dissociative piece, because it's sort of this sense of like the moment maybe that the trauma happened, they felt disempowered. They felt
Mm-hmm.
out of control. The trauma happened to them. That is a legitimate thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so then sometimes afterwards that gets kind of stuck. Our nervous system gets kind of stuck in that. And so when somebody comes in to the table with trauma, and that's a moving piece for them, a really important thing for me in my practice is that I want first to give a name to that. I want to name that for them. I want to help them to identify that, because most of the time this is just autonomic. We're not cognitive of it.
Not conscious, right?
Right. Yeah. It's not a conscious thing. So, I want to bring people into the awareness of that.
Mm-hmm.
But then also, with my somatic experiencing training, I'm able to, through a body-based approach, titrate with this, and help them to have healing. This is one of the most amazing benefits I've seen of the work that I do with my clients is this exact thing, is showing them that they are in control, that they are capable of voicing that. And then two, to respond to that, for me to be an outside body with the power differential our culture gives me, to respond and show them that the power is in their hand, and that I'm not going to, take advantage of that power differential.
Okay. What are some of the most common pitfalls with mindfulness practices?
Okay. Yeah. So Victoria and I are going to go in depth on this topic because it's a big one. It's very important to look at. We're going to talk a lot about the details of this within different mindfulness practices. It's going to be really awesome. But one of the big things that we focus on throughout it all is a couple things. One being just this idea, mindfulness is a one-size-fits-all approach. And, with the somatic work that I do, and I think just the training around trauma and stuff like that, every single person's body and mind and nervous system are just completely unique. I've had people try to talk about even sometimes I have to unlearn things with my clients when they come in. They'll be like, oh, I have this pain in my shoulder and I know that means this. And I'll be like, okay, well, let's take a step back from that, and really come at this. Let's just focus on what you're feeling in your shoulder. And a lot of times what we find is that what they've been told the meaning of this is completely irrelevant to, what we're really working with. And so there is this sense that there's one size fits all. And this is another elephant in the room when I'm doing, when I am practicing, is I name this for people. When you're telling me things about your body, I don't have a checklist over to the side that says oh, if they tell me they have pain in their lower back, that means that this happened, or they are this or something. And I think sometimes that in the mindfulness community, we see trends in some of these things. And so we want to draw we want to take a broad brush and draw conclusions about things.
When you say these things, when you say what you're saying, it reminds me of what, who's in the mindfulness community, Pema Chodron says a lot, when she says we have to drop the storyline.
Yeah.
Okay. I think about that a lot when it comes to SE work, and kind of, you kind of not totally drop the storyline, but sometimes we have to disconnect the energy behind the storyline,
Yeah.
So,
well, and when you give the answers, then, there's a lack of desire or drive to look any further. And that's one of the hardest things about that for me is, I talk a lot about, okay, I use this phrase a lot. All my clients probably laugh about this because I say it every single time, multiple times, but let's just experiment with that. We were scientists and we were just curious about what would happen if we focused on this, or we looked at this. And I'm trying to bring people back into this idea that in science, if I go and do research in it or a case study and I'm following someone, I can't come in with a bias. I can't come in with a preconceived idea of how this is going to happen. We want to come in with curiosity. We want to come in with openness, because when we're able to do that, the body really does reveal to us things that a lot of times people will be like, wow, I didn't even know that was there. I don't even know like why I had that, why I was holding that or holding on, there's this sense of like, we never would have gotten there had we tried to use the broad explanation or had the answers when we came into the room. So keeping that openness to that experience, that individualized, and that's the hard part, because when somebody comes and gets on my table, I have to be present. I have to be aware of what's going on inside of me the entire time. I have to be listening to them while I'm doing that, because I'm going into their individual experience. I can't just go like, I don't have a doctor's checklist, like, okay, well, you're experiencing this, this is the solution and we're going to fix it, and I think that's the hard part, and that work can be tiring for people over time. And so, I think I know that in my other live talks with Integrate, I've talked a lot about just self-care, and that's where some of that comes in. Because if you're not doing that self-care work, you can get burned out, like almost like cognitively burned out, to the point where it's a disservice to your clients, So yeah, going back to the question too, another really important thing around mindfulness is just being aware of some of the dissociative tendencies of that. And once again, we're not doing broad brush here, because we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? We don't want to say mindfulness is bad, because there's actually research that shows that there are some mindfulness practices that are insanely beneficial to the body and the nervous system, especially where there's trauma. But because there is sometimes a risk of dissociation with trauma, we have to also acknowledge the elephant in the room there. Once again, we have to acknowledge the risk of that. So sometimes with mindfulness, it's a sense of shut down, shut off. I'm feeling this bad feeling and I don't want to, so I'm just going to go away from it. And that's maybe coined as positive thinking, but what we know in the psychology field is that that's not really what is positive thinking. That's more of taking the idea of positive thinking and using it in a dissociative manner. And we can do the same thing with massage therapy. We can do the same thing with yoga. We can do the same thing with meditation. This sense of, I don't want to deal with life right now, so I'm going to go and bliss out. I'm going to go do that. But there sometimes that can be beneficial. Like sometimes, we can use these things as resources, as tools to help us cope and get through, as long as we're identifying them as those things and not as the antidote to our pain or the solution. Right.
No, I think that's good insight about mindfulness for sure. I like that. I think it's good being mindful about mindfulness.
Right. Well, and two, what's really funny for me as a somatic worker, so as a body worker, somatic experiencing, like I'm so focused on the body. I cannot tell you how amazing it is when I take a client just literally into a sensation in the body. We're not doing, some elaborative cognitive process or something like that. I'm literally just helping them to come into that experience. Right. But when we are able to do that authentically, the cognitive process sort of makes more sense and it navigates us to where we need to be. But when I see mindfulness a lot, it's a lot of this. It's a lot of this. It's a lot of up here. But I think that frustrates me sometimes, because I'm like, but like, what about all of this? What about all of this down here? Like, shouldn't we be mindful? Maybe we need to change the word to mindful and bodyful or something. I don't know.
Well, but I'll finish on this, and I'll let you speak to it, then I'll move on to this question. But one thing that I often have heard about on that topic, in that is we have a tendency, those of us that are high intellects, maybe could do this work. Maybe me. I just like to call it out, those of us named Julie, may have a history of people with intellects like me who we disassociate into intellectualizing. Okay. And I think I'm just calling the kettle hot because I have experience with this. That's why I'm saying this from like an experiential place, is that I think there's a way of over intellectualizing into disassociation, because that is what we know, and going into the body, because especially if there has been, and there has been, for many of us, has been lots of just bad things happening to it on a wide variety of scales, that can feel very threatening. And so it's easier to think about the mindfulness aspects of it. Think about the emotions, almost meta emotions, than experience the emotions, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's actually, it's a nervous system function to go up here. So, something that I spend a lot of time with clients, even ones that I'm not doing SE with, is bringing them down to the bottom, down to the legs. Because when we get stuck up here, we get stuck in rumination, and it's not quite, as clear as like, this is sympathetic, this is parasympathetic, but it can lead us into that sort of like slow drip concept of like just a little bit of sympathetic activation. And I think that part of why we do that is because, well, first of all, we are really smart beings. We're human beings. Like, we have the cognition to do that. But it's almost like we get stuck up here because we want to explain away. We think if we spend enough time up here, we can just explain away what happened, or and that's a little bit of a broad brush, so I should be careful here. But, we get stuck in the thought, the thinking about it. And what I'm finding is that if we slow that down by bringing people into the body, a lot of times this clears up. There's almost like a sense of like a busy city at rush hour going on when we're stuck up here. Like, there's just a bunch of different neural pathways that are trying to fire, and not enough room, and we don't really know what to do or where to go or what this thought is leading to that. But when we slow down and come into the body, then a lot of times those pathways clear up and we can go to the right path, or it's almost like the thoughts can go where they need to go rather than getting stuck in the traffic jam.
Right. Okay. No, that makes sense. I like that. I think that's a good analogy for it, for sure. Okay. So, second to last question. Okay. How can practitioners protect against these in their practices? And by these, I think you mean the pitfalls that we just talked about. Yeah.
Well, a lot of it is just the trauma-informed stuff.
So when you say trauma-informed, are you speaking to like those 6 that when we talk about them, and I will actually refer to them here in a second, like the 6 principles of like trauma-informed care we talk about, trying to establish trust, mutual power, empowerment, voice choice, understanding cultural narratives and cultural power plays, power differentials, things like that?
Totally.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's a great list. And like, I would just add that, like, for massage therapists, when it comes to touching people, just even being educated on what the variety of experience can be like for that, and once again, we're never taking a broad brush on it. But it's more of just being open to the extremes of what that can be like. And that just because maybe massage therapy is a great experience for you or for most of your clients doesn't mean that every person getting on your table feels that way, even because they're getting on your table, because of this idea of the power differential, because of this idea of, in our culture, of like, we want the outcome, so we don't even care what we have to sacrifice to get there. Because of that, there are people that are getting on massage therapist tables that don't want to be touched.
Right.
But they're just silencing that because they're doing the just, they're just, well, one, because maybe they've always silenced that because they've never been able to express and be listened to in that. But also, you have
or possibly, I was going to say, or possibly, I don't know, I'm just guessing, or possibly, I think I'm just going into the broad brushstrokes of self-care where touch is good for everybody. You know what I'm saying? Or there's just kind of this like self-care in like self-help world, where getting a massage is a form of self-care. So people will go get massages thinking it's going to, you know what I mean? Just because it's like a universal truth that really hasn't been challenged. You know what I'm saying?
Wow. Yeah, that's such a great point to make because you're so right on that, in that, like, well, obviously people who go to massage therapy school, I mean, we practice on each other. And so like most of us love that stuff. And like, we've seen how great it feels and stuff, but you're so right that like, there are people out there that is not the best form of self-care for them. And there are times in people's life where that's not the best form of self-care for somebody, and making space for that, I think, is huge. I think that is really, it goes back to just that empowerment. It goes back to that individualized care too,
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. Definitely looking into, well, and I think just having just a broader list of like what self-care is, may not necessarily be just a massage and going to get mani-pedis.
Right, because self-care could actually be somebody coming into your office and you saying, I want to empower you, and never actually touching them and allowing them the room, the space to have that voice and have it listened to, I mean, that could be amazing self-care for somebody.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's a really good point that to end on that deeper listening for sure, is a huge part of that body and mind perspective. Okay. So my last question is, okay. So you and Victoria are going to be working together at the workshop, doing a workshop together at our conference on April 7th at the Heights in the afternoon. Based on what you've kind of said today, what are you hoping for conference attendees or workshop attendees to get from you and Victoria's workshop? Like, what are some maybe top 2 to 3 takeaways you're hoping or experiences that they have? Okay.
Right. Yeah. So I'm very big picture.
Right. That's what I'm going for.
Cool. I think that this is twofold for me, because I think in the mindfulness community, people go one of two ways. They either go, mindfulness is all great, and I'm just going to put all my eggs in that basket, or sometimes there's the other extreme of people, and I think a lot of times you find this in the psychology field, where they've seen these downfalls, and so it's like, I'm so over this. I'm so over because of these downfalls. So what I want is to bring harmony in between that for people. I want to bring proof that you can have a mindful and emotionally healthy practice, and that there is benefit there. But then also over here, for people who are so far already in it, I want to draw them out of it a little bit and say, you have to still, ironically, you have to be mindful about mindfulness,
Right.
You can't just get lost in the practice or your guru or whatever. You have to use your own knowledge. And that's a big part of it, is educating yourself about these risks. So I think that that's my big hope for people, is that we can find all together collectively this like middle ground, and really, utilize some of the benefits that have been researched and proven to exist in this mindfulness practice, while avoiding the pitfalls that I think keep it from being as amazing as it could be.
Got it. Yeah, I see that. Good point. I love that. Yeah. Well, we're looking forward to having you guys on April 7th. And again, just because we've said a lot of words, let's go ahead, remind people where they can follow you again.
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram and I'm on Facebook, Carrie Burnett, LMT for both of those. I also have a website, carrieburnett.com. And that has all my contact information on it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for interviewing, and we will see you on April 7th at our conference. All right?
Okay, cool.
Okay. All right. Bye. All right. And no, not in meeting, in recording. Sorry. Hold on. We're almost there. Recording stop. Okay.